are you training hard enough, right? So on my last video, it was why you don't make gains, and one of my reasons was you're not training hard enough, right? That was my second reason, right? But I want to expand more upon this because it's a very important reason. It's probably like the top number one reason why you're probably not making any gains, right? And I just kind of want to go more in depth about it. So the points that I kind of made when it came to you not training hard enough, or if you're not training hard enough, you're not approaching failure, or you're not going past failure, and you probably don't understand failure because of that. And then you don't know what progressive overload is, right? So let me kind of explain these things a little bit more, right? So when it comes to training with enough effort to stimulate growth, right? The only way our body is able to adapt, right, is to have a response to enough stimulus to where it is actually challenged, right? And the easiest way to kind of gauge this would be going to failure or close to failure on a movement, right? And that's what's going to build strength. That's what's going to build muscle, right? Now, when it comes to strength gains, you want to train hard enough in a rep range that is usually low. And of course, like, you probably don't want to go to failure on something like a bench press or these heavy barbell movements that can injure you if you are going to failure, because you can get stuck under the squat bar. You can get stuck under the bar when you do bench press. You can like snap something up if you're not careful when you're doing deadlift, right? Whatever the case may be. So you have to be very careful with a lot of movements to not go, to that failure point, right? You might want to go like a rep before failure. And the rep before failure is basically that rep where it felt very grindy and you felt like you had to put your all into it, right? But some people don't know this, right? Some people will do like 10 reps and be like, okay, that's enough, right? They won't do anything else. And then that doesn't lead to any type of growth or any type of response, right? So just by looking at all my videos, right, and looking at my sets, the sets I perform, I am going to a point to where if I did another rep after that last rep, I don't think I'd be able to, right? I don't think I'd be able to get the weight up, right? And that's how you want to be training, right? You want to be training in a way to where you're really grinding it, you're really pushing it, right? And one thing for me is like I understood what going to failure was from the beginning. And the reason why, which is kind of funny, is because it was like what I just got out of a breakup, right? So, classic gym bro thing, I got my heart broken, so now I'm going to become this Giga Chad ultimate aesthetic bra, and then I just pushed it with every single exercise that I pushed it as far as I can until I couldn't go, and then I tried to do some more, right? And of course, what I saw was growth. But what some people don't, some people might not get that, like, that fuel, that, like, I don't know, Arkham Knight fuel or whatever. They might actually start exercise when they are at peace in their mind and their body, or maybe not in their body, but maybe they have relatively good mental health when they're getting to lifting and they're not just coming out of a bad relationship, right? So they don't know how to like really push things to where it's like I can't get any more out if I were to get, push more, right? And again, especially when it comes to building muscle, that is what's going to cause adaptation, right? So you have to be a bit more intense with your exercises, right? Now, this is when it comes to a lot of hypertrophy exercises. I say hypertrophy, but most of building exercises where you're training from a rep range anywhere from as little as 5 all the way up to as much as 30 reps, right? Or even beyond. I think it's like 50 reps is still a hypertrophy rep range, right? And so you can't just go to the gym and do 10 reps and then like you're not, those last 2 reps weren't hard at all. You can't just do that, right? That's not how the hypertrophy rep range works. How it works is that you're using a weight, or maybe with calisthenics you're using a variation that only allows for you to do 10 exercises, right? 10 reps, right? And so that means by the time you get to that 10th rep, after you perform that 10th rep, ideally you probably cannot perform another rep, right? Or you might have like maybe like one more rep in the tank, whatever. But it just all depends, right? It just all depends. And with calisthenics, right, if you're training with calisthenics, it's very easy to push things beyond failure, because you can start, let's say you're doing push-ups, and then once you can't do any full range of motion push-ups, you can start doing like half reps or shorties. And then once you can't do any of that, you can elevate your hands and then do push-ups like that, so on and so forth, until you can't squeeze a single push-up out of your chest, shoulders, and triceps, right? And again, that's what's going to allow for you to grow. Now, you don't have to go past failure and do this extreme monster training every time with every exercise, but I'm just saying that's an example of going past failure, right? By, let's say, doing a drop set and you're dropping down the weight on bicep curls. And instead of curling with 25 pounds, now you're curling with 15 pounds. And then you're going to failure in that. And then instead of curling with 15 pounds, you're curling with 10 pounds. And then you go to failure in that. So on and so forth. And that way you're going to, again, like allow for that muscle to go through the proper adaptation, right? So that's kind of like what failure is, or what going to failure is. And then the other point that I mentioned when it came to not training hard enough was basically not understanding progressive overload, right? And so progressive overload, and interestingly enough, progressive overload and failure training, they do go together, but then at the same time, they have like a little points where they might not go together, right? So like progressive overload, you might tend to want to kind of track your exercises, right? Let's say 1 week, this week you can do 6 pull-ups, and then next week, now you're able to do 10 pull-ups or something like that, right? So that means you've kind of progressively overloaded, right? That means you were able to do more with the same exercise, right? Or let's say the same weight. You're benching 100 pounds. You're benching 100 pounds for 3 reps, and then now you get up to, 10 reps next, a month later, and then you can increase the weight. Another way to do progressive overload is to increase the weight, right? So instead of benching 100 pounds, now you can bench maybe 125, right? 125 pounds. And then now maybe you're back to like 5 reps, 6 reps, or whatever the case may be. And then you work up until you do 10 reps and then increase the rate again, right? With calisthenics, it can be a bit more complicated because it's like certain exercises are a little hard to just do more of. But the easiest way is to like add weight, or to elevate your feet, right? If you want to make push-ups harder, you put your feet up on a surface, or you can use different training modalities like rings, gymnastic rings, which make the exercise very unstable. You can also elevate them, which can help you get more range of motion. You can, of course, use parallettes, and maybe let's say if you're strong enough in push-ups and you can do dips. Dips is kind of also a way to progress from push-ups to dips, right? And to make things more challenging for the muscle groups that push-ups hit, right? And when it comes to pull-ups, you can either add weight, right? You can do the same thing with dips and push-ups. You can either add weight over time. Let's say, again, using the 6 reps example that I said earlier. Maybe now you can do 10 reps of push-ups. And then after being able to do 10 good reps of pull-ups, you can start adding weight. Maybe you can start adding 10 pounds, right? After adding 10 pounds, maybe now you're down to 8 or 7 reps. And then it's your body weight plus 10 pounds. And then you train to a point to where you can do that weight for 10 reps. And then you add more weight, so on and so forth, right? Or just add more reps. I don't know, maybe you want to do 20 pull-ups with 10 pounds, whatever the case may be, right? That's still progressive overload, because guess what? You are increasing the amount of reps, right? Another way to do progressive overload is by kind of like upping the training volume, or even training frequency, right? So training volume would be, let's say in a session, you're doing more sets, right? So for me, I generally do about 3 to 2 sets per exercise. On a lot of my big exercises like dips, pull-ups, squats, I'll do 3 reps, deadlifts as well. And then for my other exercises, like let's say push-ups, rows, curls, tricep extensions, right? Any type of shoulder work, I'll do 2 sets, right? And I still feel like I get growth, and as long as I work, the muscles hard enough, right? And then let's say maybe you've been doing 2 sets for each exercise every week. Now maybe you can up it to 3 sets each exercise, right, every week. So that's still a way to progressive overload, because now you're challenging the muscle for a much longer period of time, right? So there's many ways to do it, or at least those are the three ways that I know of to do progressive overload, in order to again challenge your muscles, right? But again, the easiest one would be like to add weight and add reps. Those two coincide with each other amazingly because first, you can start with whichever weight or variation depending on how you're training, and then all you have to do is add reps with that amount of weight or that variation, and then you just add weight to that, and then so on and so forth. Unless you're going to be doing pure body weight training, which it's going to be a bit more difficult. You're just going to have to be pretty creative. Or again, you can unless you really like to do high reps, then of course you can do that, right? High reps are fun, to be honest, right? Being able to do 20 plus dips in a set, 20 plus pull-ups in a set is really fun. But again, just because you're doing more reps, if you're not taking it to failure, if you're not pushing it, if you're not training with enough intensity, then you're not gonna grow, right? If your max capacity of pull-ups is 30, but you're only doing 15 each set, and that's not failure or anything like that, then again, your ability to grow is going to be limited, right? So again, push it to the max, especially on movements that are more safe, right? Here, with me doing Hindu push-ups and Hindu squats, it's a bit differently. This is kind of more cardiovascular in a way, but I did a EMOM timer every minute on the minute, so that's about for 10 minutes, and that's about 100 Hindu squats and 100 Hindu push-ups, and I push it until the time went. So there's, again, other ways to torch the chicken or torch the turkey, however they say. There's many ways to skin the cat. So again, make sure you're pushing with enough intensity. Some people will be like, I don't know, man, I trained for 3 years and I didn't make any gains. And why? If you see the way they train, they're not going to failure. I see this so many times, if I go to a gym or at a school gym, it's people that are training and they're not even gassed a little bit after their set, right? There's the grandma who's doing 5 million reps of leg raises, for 15 sets or whatever, and she's not pushing any type of intensity whatsoever, right? And it's she's on her phone the entire time, right? I'll see people at my school gym, they'll kind of do cable exercises or bench press or whatever they're doing, but they're not pushing it. They're not going to a point to where they actually seem like they're getting challenged, right? But the big people that I see in the gym or at my school gym, they're over here training really hard. They're over here pushing themselves. And again, that's just how it works, right? One thing too, when you think about it, the more effort you put in, the more you're going to get out, right? And of course you have to be smart about it, if you're going to do heavy training and you're going to go to failure, you're probably going to want to be a bit more safe about it, and you might want to have deload weeks where you work with lighter weight, but you're still going to failure and you're pushing it. But when it comes to, let's say, body weight training or high rep training, you don't have to really worry too much about that recovery aspect, unless you're going to be strength training, right? But if you're a beginner and let's say pull-ups and dips and push-ups are really hard for you, then it's going to be very important to work with lighter variations of pull-ups, dips, and push-ups, so that way you can work into getting to normal rep ranges for those basic movements, right, and their more familiar counterparts. But yeah, peace out.